We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. Lindsay Patterson, Mike Santagata here. It is Friday Eve as we are recording. Mike, how are you?
A little tired, but it's Thursday night football in about an hour for
Yeah.
us, and we hit the weekend, so it's almost Friday. But if you're listening to this, it is Friday. Good, you've made it.
You have made it to Friday. The weather, if you're in Cincinnati, it's going to be absolutely perfect all weekend. It's finally feeling like fall out there. And we got a big matchup, AFC North matchup for the Cincinnati Bengals first division game of the season. So let's go ahead. Let's get into the matchup. Honestly, I want to start with the defensive side of the ball because I feel like that's been the topic of conversation, as it should be, over the last few weeks with this team. Honestly, ever since the ending of the Kansas City Chiefs game, this defense has had trouble stopping some of the offenses. And then when you look at Baltimore coming in, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, obviously, two threats on the ground, in the air for Lamar Jackson, and then he knows how to utilize his different weapons too. Let's talk about what you think this is going to look like because I would like to add, since we've recorded, Trey Hendrickson returned to practice. He's limited. I do want to point out that Trey didn't practice at all last week. I know obviously that was different. It was an illness. This is a stinger, but even Zach Taylor said he wouldn't have to practice at all if he wanted to play on Sunday. I do think there's optimism. He's been limited. He's been out there the last 2 days. Miles Murphy, full go. McKinley Jackson, full go. We'll see what their percentage is in this game. BJ Hill has returned, which is fantastic. But for the Cincinnati Bengals, and honestly, I just think of their defensive line facing the Baltimore Ravens. Tell me about this matchup, and are you feeling just any better with some of these bodies back?
Feel better with some of the bodies back, but really, it doesn't seem like a great matchup on paper. You've got an offense that may not get stressed too much in the Ravens with how they're able to run the ball. They're I think the number one rushing success rate. They're just think about it. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry being able to run the ball together. It's great. It's awesome. It's been working out as well as you think it would. And it feels like they don't really get tested that much offensively outside of maybe the Chiefs game. But, when they lost to the Raiders, it was a comeback victory where they already were kind of in conservative mode, thinking they won. They were up 2 scores in that fourth quarter. Dallas game, they went up big, and Dallas started coming back. And then the Bills game, that game was over by halftime. So the concern, if you're the Bengals, is will you get into situations where you can stress Lamar Jackson, be able to bring pressure, not try to have to rush 4? I don't know. Can they win the early downs? I would say, it doesn't seem likely when you're looking at the Bengals front. They've been better than you would expect when you look at some of the statistics, but they really can't string together 2 good plays in a row on base downs. So they've got to play better than they've played all year. And maybe that comes in the form of they're playing base and they bring Keem Davis-Gaither on the field. Maybe it's just you get BJ Hill, you get a little McKinley Jackson, you get all these guys that could be returning, and they just give you a great performance. And, we're using the Bengals defensive line from the past 2 weeks as an example when that was clearly an injury-ravaged unit. I would lean towards they're going to need turnovers to me. I don't expect them to come away. I don't expect us to be talking on Sunday and be like, man, they stopped the Ravens rushing attack completely, forced them into all these 3rd and longs. I don't know. I feel like they're going to stay on schedule just because I just don't think the Bengals have the horses, even with guys returning, to be able to push the Ravens offense.
Okay, outside of that, my biggest thing with Lamar Jackson, I know he can throw the ball too, but my biggest thing is when it comes to leads in this game, not to get too focused on the Bengals offense, but if you're forcing him to throw down the field, and I think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to, all focus is stop the run. All focus is, stop Lamar, Derrick Henry on the ground. Justice Hill is obviously a threat. I think something that we're not talking about enough when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens, and force him down the field in the secondary. He has the weapons, obviously, but I think that's when you see a little bit of optimism for this defense. Cam Taylor-Britt have a bounce back game. Dax Hill. Mike Hilton is definitely something to watch because he might be out for this game because he's missed the last 2 days. What does that look like? Who are they putting out there in place of Mike Hilton? Will they put a rookie out there? Will we see more any Jordan battle when it comes to the safety room? Doesn't feel like they would take Geno Stone off for this game, but all of that's to be determined on the defensive side of the ball. One of the things about Lil, and look, we can talk all we want about the last 2 weeks, and maybe I'm feeling just a little optimistic when I think about this defense can bounce back. I think about the Kansas City Chiefs game. Yes, I know Sheldon Rankins was out there for the majority of the part. BJ Hill was out there too. But this team can get up for those matchups with Lou. They truly can. And I try and take that going into this game with getting some of those healthy bodies back. I don't know what it looks like when it comes to percentage-wise for Myles Murphy, how long he'll be out there. I'd be surprised if McKinley Jackson is out there. But hey, it's do or die. It's extremely important at 1-3 right now in an AFC North battle that you don't want to get behind with the Baltimore Ravens. You're only going to get 6 or 7 offensive possessions. I would say it feels pretty normal when you face them. They can take advantage. They can take plenty of time off the clock and run the ball, and that's amazing for the Baltimore Ravens. But for me, I feel like you put the focus on stopping the run, force the throws downfield.
Yeah, if they can't stop the run, they have to be able to get pressure because the thing that concerns me with the pass defense isn't so much, they can't hang with the Ravens receivers, but it could end up like the Washington game where there's just absolutely no pressure because they're so focused on caging in the quarterback and, building a collapsing pocket when they haven't been able to collapse that pocket outside of Trey Hendrickson. So it becomes just guys bull rushing in place and not really threatening the quarterback whatsoever. And when we saw it against Washington, it was Jaden Daniels having 4 seconds plus to throw the ball, plenty of situations. And now Lamar Jackson, he's better thrower of the football than Jaden Daniels by what I can tell at the moment.
Okay.
So Daniels is a rookie. I think Jackson's a really good thrower of the football. I don't think we're talking about Snoop Huntley over here.
No.
MVP. Yeah. So my concern is just Lamar Jackson's a very good passer. Even if you take away the rushing ability, if you can't get any pressure, he could also sit back there and go 21 of 23, if not just as good, if not better than what Daniels did by virtue of them not getting any pressure. Maybe that changes because you have Myles Murphy coming back and he gets to face probably a rookie 3rd-round pick or Patrick McCarry at right tackle. You maybe get BJ Hill winning against Daniel Falele or Andrew Voorhees or somebody because I know their interior has had struggles in pass protection outside of Tyler Linderbaum. But my big concern in the pass game has nothing to do with anything other than can they get enough pressure that Jackson has to get the ball out within 3 seconds.
Yeah, pressure is going to be huge. Pressure him. Pressure Lamar Jackson is something that you always want to do when you face Lamar Jackson. I think something to keep an eye on, and somebody who's I feel like been a killer when they face them is Isaiah Likely. We'll see if that's if he utilizes him more. I felt like that was a lot in week 1. Really haven't seen it much since. Andrews hasn't really been the same. But look, he could have a big game. He can against the Cincinnati Bengals, the tight end group. That's definitely something to watch with this team. If he does throw it in the air, is Zay Flowers going to be a factor? But for me, I honestly feel like we're not talking enough about Hill. I think he can be a threat not only in the air, but also on the ground for the Ravens in this defense. Look, you need this defense to make some stops. You're going to get so many possessions. They're going to be able to take advantage of the clock. But I'm not optimistic like this is lose old defense when it was 2021 or even in 2022 when you have guys like Jesse Bates or different playmakers out there. But this is when you need the guys to step up, and maybe there's more Akeem Davis-Gaither out there. Maybe this is a Jermaine Pratt turnover, Logan Wilson type of game where they come up big in this battle. I agree with you. You're going to need a turnover on defense. And offensively, you think about this matchup. This isn't an easy defense to face. I would feel there's advantage when I think about the Cincinnati Bengals receivers versus their secondary, but what does it look like on the interior offensive line versus the Baltimore Ravens defensive line? Do I feel like Joe will have time when it comes to his protection on the offensive side of the ball for Joe? Do I like the wide receiver matchup? I do. I think this is the game that you continue your 12 personnel. You use Eric All, you use Zach Moss, Chase Brown as a 1-2 punch. Utilizing the tight ends would be absolutely huge in this game. I don't know if they can get a run game going, but it's something that they've never really been able to do when they face the Baltimore Ravens and run the ball. If you go back to what that early Thursday night football game looked like before Joe Burrow was injured, he was going to his tight ends. And I know he got injured in the second quarter, but Joe was moving the ball just fine on the road, down the field, throwing it to his different tight end groups. And I think you can do that in this game. And that's what the focus is going to be on for the Cincinnati Bengals. Balance out your offense. Keep Lamar Jackson on the sideline, just like Baltimore is going to want to keep Joe Burrow on the sideline. Again, 6 or 7 possessions, you need touchdowns. Field goals will not do it. And all of that is going to be extremely important on the offensive side of the ball. When you think about the Bengals offense versus the Baltimore Ravens defense, what do you think about that matchup?
It feels to me like the key of the entire game might be, can the Bengals interior offensive line hold its own against the Matabike Travis Jones combo? Because I don't feel like Ojabo, Kyle Van Noy, or Odafe Owe are going to wreck the game on the edges. I have like slight concern about Amarius Mims hitting Kyle Van Noy, who's probably the best at moving inside out, and with Mims having a couple of reps a week where he oversets and doesn't recover to the inside, so might get some quick pressure, 1 or 2. I'm not saying something insane like you're going to look to pull Mims off the field or anything like that, but just if Kyle Van Noy is able to leverage his ability to work inside against Mims in key downs. But I don't see either one of those guys wrecking the game. I think Odafe Owe has played better this year. I think Ojabo has finally looked like he's arrived as the player in Michigan that everybody thought he might be. But Orlando Brown's having his best season. So that's kind of like a strength on strengths matchup on that side. It's the interior I'm worried about, where Volson's had a pretty good year, but the only high-level opponent he's faced is Chris Jones, who gave him the business. And Wharton for the Chiefs is having a good year and beat up on both Kappa and Volson as well. I have just a mild concern there of just Matabike is a good pass rusher. Travis Jones is looking like an improved good pass rusher this season. Can they handle 2 good interior pass rushers in this game and be able to push the ball down the field? Because I think that you need to push the ball down the field against this team. It always feels like the Bengals offense is a little bit caged against this Ravens defense. They go out there, they play some type of quarters to one side, cover 2 to the other side. Jamar Chase is going to get that cover 2 side. And it just doesn't feel like Burrow pushes the ball against the quarters side enough so far in his career, where it seems like he's happy to stay within 12 yards on his throws and not really attempt anything deep down the field. I think he should try to take the top off this defense because it's not a defense that's impenetrable. If I'm thinking about the Ravens defense, I'm almost a little more worried about throwing all this stuff underneath when they have Kyle Hamilton than I am trying to take a risk over the top against one of these corners. Yeah, if you can get the safety on the quarter side to bite down on some type of vertical action from the number 2 and have number 1 run a deep route, and you get a one-on-one opportunity for T. Higgins against whoever, I don't care if it's Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stevens, whoever over there, I'm taking that opportunity, because that's a chance to really blow the doors off this defense and make it feel less caged in. I feel like those opportunities have been there for the Bengals in the past, and Burrow doesn't really look to push the ball in those scenarios for whatever reason. He seems a little bit more content to keep it within 12 yards. I think he was starting to push it a little bit in the game Thursday night before the injury, but we'll see. The most interesting matchup to me, though, in this Bengals offense versus Ravens defense is the Bengals rushing attack against this Ravens rush defense, because this is a strength on strength matchup. The Bengals rushing attack by most metrics is like the top 3, top 5, somewhere in there. They're an awesome running attack right now. And it feels like this is the most comfortable running attack that Joe Burrow has been a part of. The Ravens defense is number 1 in rushing defensive success rate. So they are basically the best run defense going against a top 3 run offense. It's a great time for the Bengals offense to be able to prove itself, and I think they're probably going to get a little bit better looks in this game than the Ravens give other teams, because they're probably going to force a lot of 2 high coverages with their ability to throw the ball. So can they take advantage of that, stay on schedule, stay on script, and be able to really march the ball down the field against the Ravens and make it become a battle of patience where you're pushing the ball down the field on the ground and forcing them to have to bring a safety, somebody down into the box and give you an even better chance to push the ball down the field. We'll see. But that is a very interesting matchup for me because, yes, I agree that the wide receivers probably have a advantage over this cornerback room, but can you get the safeties out of there so that the wide receivers can work against these corners? Or can you just somehow, whether that is by occupying the safety with a deeper route and you push it over the top of that, or by running the ball until they bring the safeties further and further down to help stop the run?
Yeah, I think, it's one of those matchups. I agree with you. Joe can't be afraid to just throw it downfield. And maybe they use Burton in this game as someone who can, create even more separation. We'll see. But you have T. Higgins, you have Jamar Chase, Yoshi is obviously an option. I do think that the tight ends will continue to be involved in this game. I would love to watch that matchup. But I agree with you. The run game, what does it look like against one of the best on the defensive side of the ball? And if it is able to move the ball, that is a huge win for the Cincinnati Bengals to have that in this matchup because, again, you want to take time off the clock. It's what Baltimore is extremely good at on the offensive side of the ball. They can go on 6 minute, 7 minute scoring drives and like it's nothing. And that leaves you with no time. And that's why you have to capitalize if you're in the red zone with touchdowns. And it might be where this team is in 4-down territory. And maybe you'd say, oh no, you got to take the points versus Baltimore. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see what it looks like, the intensity of it. The Cincinnati Bengals are 0-2 at home right now. They're at home for this game. Really could use a home win, could use a division win. 2-3 is, oh man, that feels like such a difference from 1-4 for the Cincinnati Bengals. And Baltimore's coming off. They're hot. They're one of the hot teams in the NFL right now. 2 wins in a row. Obviously, their 2 losses were close games. Had every opportunity to win them. You can look at a lot of the Cincinnati Bengals losses and say, hey, you would have had opportunities to win those games and you didn't. This is a huge test for them and one to show everyone like, hey, you're still in it. You should still be in the conversation for the AFC North. Let me ask you this, though, because I love a double dip. In the Panthers game, the Cincinnati Bengals got the ball right before they went into halftime, and they got the ball, obviously, in the beginning of the third quarter. If you are Zach Taylor, what do you do if you win the toss?
Defer. I always say defer. I don't know. It's statistically
Julio.
better to defer than it is to receive the ball. The only reason you receive the ball is if you believe like we're going to set the tone with our offense or something. And the only time it made sense to me was when the Bengals offense was struggling a little bit. They would I think it was in 2022. They received and then just to build up just so you get your first 15 out there, you're not worried
Okay.
about the game script or anything. You're just able to have an effective early offense. But to me, deferring is better. I mean,
I
this
agree.
goes back to controlling the middle 8 would be what it's called there, where the final 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half, you can swing the game. And I've seen it happen to the Bengals the opposite way. Actually, think of I can't think of a game right now off the top of my head, but I do know that in the Washington game, I was a little upset to be like, they don't get the ball after half, do they?
Oh,
um, they and that happened in every game this year, other than the game against Carolina, where they did get the ball after half. But being able to double up there, like you're saying, double dip, that is huge. That's just you're able to, if you're good enough,
yeah.
score a 14-point unanswered drive because the other team doesn't get the shot to be able to get the ball back. And it is kind of what happened with Carolina. Is it just they scored right at the end of the half and got the ball back, and that game went from I think it was tied before that Zach Moss touchdown,
Hmm.
and then it became a 2-score lead throughout the rest of the game. That's huge. Yeah, I've always been a big defer person. I just statistically, it's an advantage, and when you think about it, it's just a strategic advantage if you're able to control the clock.
Yeah, this is an absolute huge game where you want that control of the clock. And I agree. If you win it, give it to Baltimore first. You kind of know what you're playing with. And even if they take 5 or 6 minutes on a scoring drive, you still know getting the ball in the third, you go down, you score in the first. It's all extremely important when it comes to possessions when you face Baltimore. Think about it. Obviously, we've talked plenty about the defensive issues over the last few weeks. It's really disappointing. to be where they're at when it comes to the missed tackles. And honestly, this team can stop the run. They just struggle with missing tackles after,
Making the tackle.
making the stop. It's absolutely crazy. They don't pull them down, and it's just really frustrating because if you look back at the Commanders game, if you have one stop again, you win the game. I truly believe it. Just one of those stops. In Baltimore, I feel like they're going to feel that same, that similar game script where they're like, we can go for it on fourth down. I feel pretty confident in us, converting to first down or those third and longs. So this defense is they have to step up, and you really do. I know it's his first game back of Miles Murphy. I don't know how long he's going to be on the field, but you need it. You need it to rotate out with some of the different guys out there. Chris Jenkins, hoping to see continue more from him as his third game out there on the defensive side. Trey Hendrickson, we just don't know the percentage of how he's going to feel if he's out there. It feels optimistic that he will be out there, but how does he feel? What does that look like? He is a monster. He can really change the game, and they need him. So I don't know. They just need their guys. They need these guys to finish it off on the in the secondary. And Joe Burrow said, "I have to play a perfect game." And he, again, who knows? It's just press conferences and things like that. But this guy, anytime he was interviewed this week, which he has his weekly Wednesday press conference, just serious business. Knows how big this game is. It could really turn around the season to be 2-3 as you play an AFC North game, go into New York. Not easy against that defense, but again, would feel a lot better with where the season could go if you can get this game complete at home and beat the Baltimore Ravens. Saying that, go ahead and give your prediction.
I am going to first lay out the path to a Bengals victory in my brain because I didn't talk enough about it, I think, when we were talking about the Bengals defense. I'm not as down on them as it might have sounded. Just I don't think they're going to win this game in traditional ways of being able to stop the run and force third and longs. But if you can get a lead at the offense and you can force the Ravens to throw the ball that way, or you get a couple of turnovers, I think that would be huge. I think the big part here would be if the Ravens are going to shorten the game, drag you into the mud, and turn this into a 7-possession game for the Bengals, well, that's 7 possessions for the Ravens. And if you can force 2 turnovers, that's 5 possessions. And that becomes very difficult for the Ravens to be able to keep up with the Bengals offense, who I don't think is in a situation where they should get shut out, even if this defense did look very good against Buffalo, who's a good offense in its own right. I think that would be your path here, is just be able to protect Joe Burrow long enough when you face an interior defensive line pass rush like this, be able to run the ball and get some turnovers on defense. I don't think you should go into the game expecting to stop this run, to stop Henry like you did in Tennessee, because it's more dynamic than what Tennessee was able to provide because they have a better quarterback. I do think if I had to pick right now, the Ravens win this game. It's tough because on paper it is tough for this defense. I've gone back and forth. I think they can force turnovers. Logan Wilson has been very good against the Ravens in his career. I think he's had a very good start to his season. So if he can continue that, he might be the key to this defense having a game that you're not prepared for. But if I had to predict, I think the Ravens end up scoring 34 and the Bengals 27, something like that. Maybe even the Bengals push to 31 in this scenario. But and I don't find it impossible that the Bengals win this game. I'm not trying to say that. I'm not saying the Ravens win by 2 scores. It just feels like a lot of firepower against a defense that every week you think they're going to find their footing somehow, and they keep stumbling.
Yeah, I definitely think that's all fair when you think about this matchup. And I've thought about it too. I'm like, oh, I should just take the Ravens. It would just be the smart pick. Take Baltimore. Because I feel like that's what I'm mostly seeing out there anyways. And obviously it makes sense. Like I said before, they're on a streak. They're one of the hottest teams in the AFC right now. I know they dropped the first 2 of the season, but the way they're playing, it's a hard offense to stop. And with the way the Bengals defense is played, it's really hard to say, oh, I feel very confident in this. I do think it's going to come up to playmakers making big plays. I've seen it before over the last 3 years that they've come up with those turnovers. And hey, maybe Geno Stone gets one and it's full circle from the first matchup last time on the same field, and he's able to get it from Lamar Jackson. Lamar's talented, obviously one of the top quarterbacks in the AFC. Derrick Henry knows what to do. Age is just a number with him. Obviously, we saw that against the Bills. What I try to pull from it is when I think about what Baltimore did to the Bills, And I just feel like the Bills are in the AFC North is just a bad matchup, to be honest with you. Just from
Yeah,
what I've been able to see from the Bengals
they
face.
get they get out physicaled. It feels
Yeah,
like.
the
Yeah.
physical part of the game. The Bengals know what the AFC North football feels like. The Baltimore Ravens know what it feels like. It's just different in division play. Division play normally does feel pretty close in that matchup, despite how the defense is played. I try and think of it as, look, Josh Allen is a top quarterback. Not to make this too Bills focused. He is a top quarterback. Some would say he's 2 or 3. Who cares about the rankings? But he's a really good quarterback, and the Bills are a really good team. He has good tight ends. He has a good run game. I truly feel like having Jamar Chase out there, having a T. Higgins out there is such a difference from that number one type of receiver, what that looks like against the Baltimore Ravens defense. They're obviously all familiar with each other. Is Joe able to figure it all out because their defensive coordinator is gone? Somebody who has just been able to not own Joe, but he's done a really good job against Joe Burrow over the last few years. What will there be a difference in that? What does that look like for me? It's all business. You take advantage of the possessions. Yeah, sometimes you're going for it on fourth down. And for some reason, I could be completely wrong, and maybe it's not even a close game at all. And the Cincinnati Bengals dropped the 1-4 on the season. But I would love to believe in jinxes in sports, but I don't believe in them because I've picked against the Bengals before, and they've ended up losing the game anyways. I'm going to take the Bengals. I do think it's going to be a high-scoring game, even though everybody's kind of pointing towards it's going to be a shootout. It's going to be this. I'm going to say 30-27. It's a close game. I think you're going to have that turnover against Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow is going to have to play what he's been able to do over the last few weeks with this offense, and maybe they'll have to carry this game, and maybe that's just how this season's going to have to go until the Miles Murphy types or McKinley Jackson or the defensive side of the ball learns how to stop and tackle offensive players. But for now, I think momentum can get back on their side. You're back home. I know, they used to have a lot of success at home at Paycor Stadium, 1 o'clock game, perfect weather. And I think the Cincinnati Bengals continue with a nice little tiny win streak right now. And they're able to beat the Baltimore Ravens 30-27. And T. Higgins returns to the end zone twice.
Twice. Ooh.
Yeah, it's
I
time.
do think it's a good bet to put T. Higgins in the end zone because he's been so close. And
Yep.
he would have a touchdown in back-to-back weeks if he didn't get held and the balls were a little better. And I
Yep.
expect Joe Burrow to keep throwing accurate balls. So he's only been, I think Joe Burrow's been like maybe a tad less accurate, but like 5% less accurate after this season compared to last couple of years. It's just like 1 or 2 throws that you go like, ooh, like that could have stayed down a little bit. It doesn't look like complete sprays. It doesn't look like Jordan Love misses. It looks like just, clean up. I don't know. I'm not a quarterback guru, but clean up what's going on a little bit just to get that ball down in that scenario because it seems like it's usually high when it's coming out, spraying a
Yeah.
little high. But yeah, I can see the Bengals winning this game. I did not mean for it to go
No, no, no.
like
I think you brought
the
up good
Ravens are down.
points.
Yeah, and I think it's huge if the Bengals do win this game because you lose the game 1-4. It's tough. You're
It
not
is.
out, but you're certainly looking from the outside in at the moment. Get to 2-2, and the Ravens are 2-2. I mean,
2 and 3.
I would 2-3, right? But both teams would be 2-3 in this scenario. And I would bet if you looked at some type of Vegas odds, both teams would probably still be the favorite in that scenario to win the
Yeah.
division. One of those two back to back. I think they would. Maybe the Steelers get to 4-1. That becomes a little bit more difficult to say. But
All the luck. The Steelers have all the luck in the world. Like half of the Dallas defense is out this week.
yeah. Well, it is one of those situations of like good. Sometimes teams like play above what they're able to do because they find ways to win games. Bengals are currently finding ways to lose games other than last week, and the Steelers are finding ways to win games other than last week. So you got to reverse that fortune around because a lot of games in the NFL are tight. I mean, most games you'll see are 1-score games, but yeah, I like the idea. I like that how T. Higgins could score maybe twice in this game and really push things because the Ravens have not singled up to his side, but played a little bit laxer coverage on his side compared to the Jamar Chase side. So can he take advantage of that? I think he can. I think Burrow has to give him the opportunity. And, that certainly could lead to a Bengals win.
Yeah, I think you brought up good points. Like I said, the whole entire week I'm like, Bengals probably gonna lose this game. And look, before Sunday, before I walk into Paycor Stadium, I'll probably convince myself today's just not gonna be the day. I just know it. They're not gonna win. But for some reason, I can still see this team coming out with the win. I really can. And it's mostly because of my confidence in the offense of how they've played over the last few weeks. It's AFC North football. It anything could happen. It could be wild. Baltimore is one of the top teams in the NFL right now. You could say, honestly, they're the top team in the AFC right now. No offense to the Chiefs. I just offensively, they haven't really been clicking. Their defense is legit, obviously, but Baltimore is on top. You gotta beat the top team, and you gotta win these AFC North games. You can't keep banking on other games. Well, you can't, especially when you're 1-3 on the season. You gotta win your division games, and this opportunity is here. I'm hoping it's a good game. Don't want them to drop to 1-4. Won't be surprised if they do, but I got confidence in Joe Burrow and his crew. So we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully we're talking about that after the game on Sunday. Mike has, as I mentioned before, a fantastic piece. Chase Brown had plenty of other work that you want to go check out over on his Twitter page, some of the video breakdowns, Bengals_Sands. You can follow me at Lindsay Patterson. We will be back Sunday, win or lose, to break down Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati.